Hey, David Bruce here on an episode of Chordplay, and it's the Chords of Kingdom Come. And Kingdom Come formed in Hamburg, Germany in 1987. And in 1988, they released Kingdom Come, their self-titled debut, and it went on to become very successful. It actually went gold the day it was shipped, and it was very well received, very popular. But pretty much right after that album came out, they received a lot of backlash and rock throwing for closely emulating one of their biggest influences. And of course, I'm talking about Led Zeppelin. Now, I'm a huge Zeppelin fan. So when I was a kid, I loved Van Halen, I loved Led Zeppelin, I couldn't get enough of Eddie or Jimmy Page. And then when I discovered, of course I discovered other players too, but when I heard Kingdom Come, it kind of tickled that Led Zeppelin, hair, I guess, where I was like, hey, I like this. It kind of reminds me of Zeppelin, but it's a little different. Definitely more of the kind of, rockin' 80s style, but with this, heavy Zeppelin influence. Really, really cool. So if you haven't heard that album, definitely check out their original, debut. And then they've had some, other albums too. Hands of Time actually has Blues Saraceno on guitar. The only time, he kind of worked with the group. And that's a cool album, but it's nowhere near as good as that first Kingdom Come album. The original guitarist in Kingdom Come, Danny Stag, he did appear on the first couple albums and left the band. I think that's right around the time that Blues Saraceno kind of joined. And then Blues left, and they had some changing, members, this kind of revolving door. And then eventually Danny did come back. And Danny Stag's a really interesting kind of blues rock guitarist, great riffs and chords, good fills and solos, good tone, good player. And I think at the time, in the late 80s, his style really stood out because that was definitely the heyday of shredding and, Racer X and Yngwie and Vai and Satriani. And then suddenly you had this kind of blues rock guitarist with a lot of 70s influence and tone and feel. And it did stand out because it was, radically different than what was popular on the scene. And speaking of Led Zeppelin, I recently finished this Led Zeppelin When Giants Walk the Earth book. This is great. I guess this is like the 10th anniversary edition, so it's 10 years old, but for some reason I'd never read this until just recently. This blew me away. So if you're a Zeppelin fan or a Jimmy Page fan, and you want to get a little bit more dirt and kind of behind the scenes action as far as what happened in the late 60s, throughout the 70s, and then it even continues on into the, throughout the 80s and 90s and brings it all the way up until today. But, great book if you're a Zeppelin fan, so check this one out. With the opening, that was Get It On from the self-titled album. And it's kind of like this kind of variation, almost like a Black Dog kind of variation in a way, because you've got the riff, and then you've got the chord movement. And the chord movement's almost like Kashmir a little bit, but something like this. Right there, you got this kind of hybrid blues. I guess you could think of it a couple different ways, but he's hitting the major third, but then he's also kind of playing with the flat 7, so it is kind of a hybrid A minor pentatonic with a major third. And right there, he's kind of playing with that F sharp and G. And then rolling right there, minor third to major third, that C to C sharp. And he's kind of doing that little half step bend there on the F sharp and then walking down to that G. like play it staccato like that. And then you move into this chord riff. So right there, it's an A power chord, A5. And then a little piece of A augmented, you know, raised fifth or sharp 5. And then you're going to move to this A6. And right there, it's like a little piece of G over A and then G sharp over A to A. Kind of just walking up chromatically. And that's the part that kind of loosely reminds me of Kashmir. It's not exact, it's in a different key, but it's that little twist of that single note. You're kind of moving between those chords. Definitely, you know, a heavy, you know, Zeppelin vibe right there, big time. You know, really cool song though. Okay, up next is Living Out of Touch from the debut album, and it's something like this. So it starts with this single note riff, and it's A minor pentatonic based, and it's kind of moving between two positions like this. And that last time you're kind of grabbing a little piece of A blues, like the flat 5 right there, that E flat. Like that. Just kind of a simple riff, but it's catchy and rhythmic, and you know, definitely, you know, kind of catches your attention. The verse starts and you just quietly strum an A minor chord, and then there's an F major 7 over A with a reverse rake, a reverse, you know, strum, and then the A minor, F major 7 over A, and then this little fill, and then back to that A minor, F major 7 over A, and then the A minor, back to F major 7 over A, and then eventually it moves back to that riff. Pretty simple example, but you know, a riff doesn't have to be hard to play for it to be cool, and that's a really cool riff. Next is the song Do You Like It from their second album, In Your Face. This is a cool song, something like this. It's rocking, you know, really cool. So we're doing this partial, it's like an A minor 7, kind of a partial chord in the beginning, and there's vibrato. I love when guitarists use vibrato on chords like that. And you can think of that as like a little piece of G over A. So it's, you know, a little implied A minor 7, G over A, back to that A minor 7 partial, and then it's like a D5 over A right there, and then down to that A5 power chord at the end. Now you could relate all those chords to A if you wanted to. There's A minor 7, it could be an A7 sus2, there's There's that A minor 7 again. And then you could think of this as an A sus4. You can think of that however you want. You could think of that as G over A, D over A, however you want to do it. But I'm hearing that A, it's just pedaling that A, and the bass is grabbing the A, So I'm thinking of all those related to A instead of, the G or the D and those other partial chords. So A minor 7, A7 sus 2, A sus 4, and A5, like that. And when the verse starts, it's the same type of thing, but it moves to the 4 chord, and it's, variated just a little bit. We're doing this D minor 7 right here, implied D minor 7. But there you've got the open D string, that C, and that F note, which is giving you just enough to imply D minor 7. And then a D7 sus 2 right there. And you're going to reach up and grab that G, and that's like a D sus 4 or D7 sus 4. And eventually move down to that D power chord. And on those, you're just kind of hitting them and letting them ring like this. And then back to that bouncy opening riff, which is also the chorus. That song rocked. Up next to the song "Lovin' You" from the first album, and this is this kind of bluesy, finger-picked, intro part. A lot of implied chords, kind of loosely based around E7, something like this. It does remind me of Zeppelin a little bit. Definitely the part that comes in right after that totally sounds like Zeppelin. This just sounds like some kind of rootsy, raw, bluesy intro part. And you're basically starting here. And I'm definitely finger picking on this. So you're grabbing the low E open, the 9th fret there on the G, and then the B and the high E open. And you're kind of finger picking those open strings. Hammering on that E to F sharp right there. And you want to move that index finger over to that B note and then pick the high E, B, and then that D string that you're holding down. Like that. And then you actually hear him bend this F sharp up. He's kind of almost hitting like a whole step bend with the B and the high E open. Like that. Kind of has a real country kind of pedal steel sound, like that. And then do those kind of open strings with that B note you're holding down there on the D string. And then you kind of start it again. Do that bend again. And that second time you just kind of finish it going back to that E note. And you hear this kind of Hendrixy hammer on. And the second time you just kind of stop right there and it goes into the verse. But that's a really cool intro part and a cool song. But I dig that kind of fingerstyle, bluesy, rootsy thing in the beginning. So cool. next to the song Pushin' Hard, which is also from the first album, and it's something like this. So it starts with this F sharp minor pentatonic based riff right here. And you hear a second guitar harmonize with that up here. And then you hear this like kind of partial chord series during the verse. It's an E minor right here. A C over E right here. Go back to that E minor, and then it's D over E, and then back to that C over E. And I really do like that. I am kind of adding that low E in there, because it's kind of like the bass, and you can kind of hear, you know, that root note down there. It does sound really empty if you just strum the chords by itself. The song actually sounds more like this. So I'm really just kind of filling that up because I'm playing it by myself. But with a band, you know, you definitely just want to, you know, hit the chords. But then by yourself, you might want to fill that out with that low E. And kind of gallop rhythm in there. The last example is from What Love Can Be, which is from the first album. You know, very famous and popular ballad. It was popular at the time. And I think it's kind of had a little resurgence of popularity because I've seen posts on YouTube of this song and it has millions and millions of views. So I think, you know, it's kind of finding a new audience. But it's something like this. Really cool. So I don't know what's going on as far as the tuning, because when you listen to this on the studio version or the recorded version, it's actually a half step higher than that. So I don't know if maybe he had a capo on the first fret, or maybe they recorded it in standard and maybe it was too slow, so they used the old pitch wheel on the reel-to-reel machines, you know, in the studio, and, you know, bumped it up a little bit faster, but that also would have raised the pitch, because everything on that first album's in standard tuning except for this song. So I don't know what's going on here, but it's noticeably here. And then that first chord would be, you know, really tricky, like that. So I suspect he's actually doing this. And playing it like that, because you can hear those kind of ringing open strings. He's not really fretting it and barring it like that. But anyway, so I'm just going to show this in standard tuning the way I suspect he actually played it. So I don't know why it's actually a half step higher. Sorry for the long-winded excuse, but I had to explain what was going on here. So it starts here. And then you have this, and that's basically an F major sharp 11 over C. It actually sounds like F sharp major 7 over C sharp. You know, so I don't know what's going on there. And then you hear it move up to this D minor chord. And I really love the way, you know, he strums that D minor bar chord and he creates this little melody. D7 sus4 in a way. And then right there go to A minor. Hendrixy, you know, kind of R&B stabs there. And then you're going to hear that opening riff modified like that. And then go back to that F major 7, or I'm sorry, F major sharp 11 over C. And then you hear this kind of buffet of all these different triads. There's D minor, D minor, A minor, D minor again, and then A minor. And I love that kind of stuff. These kind of dancing triads right there. So one more time, that was D minor, and then you answer that with another D minor down here, and then there's A minor right there. This little partial D minor right here, like D minor over A, and then just end that with A minor right there. And then do that little Hendrixy walk down. You know, really cool guitar part, and the guitar work in that song is brilliant. Check out the guitar solo, it's amazing. One more time here. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Kingdom Come. They're definitely a very interesting band. I remember, you know, back in the day they caught my attention, and I've consistently gone back to that album and really listened to it thinking, man, you know, what would have happened if instead of people being angry and throwing rocks, like what if that would have blown up? And then maybe their second album would have been kind of a continuation of that, because I think they've changed their style because of the backlash. Everybody was screaming Led Zeppelin, and then they stopped playing that way. But I really dug that album as a Zeppelin fan. I thought, man, I liked hearing that. That was a heck of a lot better than like the Honey Drippers and some of the stuff that the actual members of Led Zeppelin were playing at that time. They weren't rocking out, you know, like Kingdom Come was. So I don't know. I don't mean to offend anybody or upset anybody. Definitely don't want to upset any, you know, Led Zeppelin fans or the Greta Van Fleet joke earlier. That was just a joke. But yeah, Kingdom Come's kind of underappreciated, overlooked, you know, but there's some great music. And Danny's a great guitarist too, so check that stuff out. And anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.